Welcome to Panther Sport. We've been thinking about Cuba and Uzbekistan, about the greats who excelled in the amateur and professional ranks, thinking about that shining trio of US heavyweight champions, Ali, Frazier and Foreman. Each won gold at successive Olympic Games. Indeed, many notable US professional champions did so on the back of considerable amateur success. Andre Ward, Roy Jones Jr., Floyd Mayweather, Evander Holyfield, Pernell Whitaker, Sugar Ray Leonard, to name but a small few. In many Western boxing countries, the amateurs are seen as a path to the professional game. Choose international experience, choose the Olympics, choose a tattoo of the rings on your bicep, choose the shiny pro contract, choose 4-rounders, Uber drivers and building a highlight reel, choose potential world title glory, fame and riches, choose capitalism. Cuba and Uzbekistan stand a little apart in this regard, with their reverence of the amateur game. Few said it better than amateur GOAT Teofilo Stevenson. What is $1 million worth compared to the love of 8 million Cubans? And so the boxing world has had to speculate on mythical matchups. None more tantalizing than Stevenson himself against Muhammad Ali. 3 Olympic gold medals, a thunderous right hand, physical presence that made rooms feel small. Ali at his peak, the greatest combination of speed, skill and theatre the sport has ever seen. The argument has never been settled and never will be, which is both the tragedy and the romance of it. Then there is Felix Savon, 3-time Cuban Olympic heavyweight gold medalist. He turned down repeated approaches to turn professional, including allegedly a 7-figure offer from Don King to fight Mike Tyson. Certainly would have been box office of the highest order. Instead we are left with speculation and mythology. Hungary at László Papp, 3-time gold medalist, turned professional, won 29 fights on his way to becoming European champion. Booked to fight Joey Giardello in a world title bout in 1964, the Hungarian government denied his exit visa and pulled his professional license. And what of Egyptian amateur star Mohamed Hikal, who bested a young Alexander Usyk twice and Gennady Golovkin, and he never turned professional. The sands of time are ever shifting, and the Cubans penetrated the professional game in earnest through the noughties. But it is worth pausing on how that happened, because it is one of the most dramatic threads in modern boxing. They defected. Yuriorkis Gamboa defected in 2006 at the World Championships in Mianyang, walking away from the Cuban team and eventually settling in the United States. Guillermo Rigondeo, perhaps the most technically gifted boxer in history, defected twice, the second time he was successful, eventually becoming a 2-weight world champion. Erislandy Lara left Cuba in 2008. These were not quiet career transitions. These were men risking serious consequences to them and their families to pursue the professional game their government forbade them from entering. That context matters when we talk about Cuban boxing. The fighters who made it in the professional ranks did so the hard way, and for all the talent, for all the sacrifice, Cuban style has never quite hit the same heights professionally. Rigondeo became a world champion, yes, but he was widely considered too cautious, too unwilling to engage. He could not create the spectacle, and sadly people did not want to watch him. Gamboa showed flashes of brilliance but lost his greatest tests. Lara, perhaps the most complete of the Cuban pros, he too fell in his biggest test to Canelo Alvarez. Casamayor lost to Acelino Freitas, Ortiz to Wilder, Mike Perez to Povetkin, and more recently Andy Cruz was out-hustled by Raymond Muratalla. Why? The structural reasons are worth understanding. Amateur boxing rewards volume, movement and ring generalship, taking place over a shorter number of rounds. The bigger gloves reduce the impact of individual shots. The shorter time frame does not allow for attritive damage. Indeed, Olympic scoring systems historically prioritize clean punching over damage. Cuban fighters are trained from youth to excel in precisely that environment. The professional game asks different questions. 12 rounds of sustained physical pressure to win a world title. Smaller gloves amplify the clean shots. Judges who reward aggression and ring control alongside or even over technique can score against a Cuban. Opponents are specifically preparing to break you down. The athletic and psychological demands are substantially different, and the transition is much harder than it looks from the outside. So Cuba has traditionally been the arrogant flourish of the intellectual boxing fan, but now a new power is rising. The age of the Uzbeks may be upon us. Uzbekistan competed in the Olympics as an independent nation for the first time in 1996, having spent almost 100 years competing under variously the Russian Empire and USSR. Their first Olympic gold as a solo act was in Sydney in the year 2000. It was won in boxing by Murodjon Akhmadaliev. Akhmadaliev went on to amass a professional record of 21 wins and 4 losses. He unsuccessfully challenged for the WBO light welterweight title against Miguel Cotto. Since Akhmadaliev, Uzbekistan has become the dominant force in the amateur game. At the 2024 Olympics in Paris, Uzbek boxers took gold in 5 of 7 male weight divisions. Of Uzbekistan's 49 Olympic medals, 20 have been in boxing. Of their 18 golds, 10 in boxing. So, what makes the Uzbeks so special? What makes them so special is their blend of amateur footwork with firepower and a tendency to show off and embrace the spectacle of professional boxing. Most of these fighters make for phenomenal highlight reel material. Even in a losing effort, Madrimov is dancing with his hands down and drilling right hands into the face of a modern great in Terence "Bud" Crawford. Madrimov deserves more than a passing mention. The light middleweight champion had a stellar amateur career before turning professional and worked his way into a fight with Crawford. Madrimov did not win that fight, but he was not at all embarrassed. It was a close and competitive bout. He hurt Crawford. He landed the kind of shots that remind you these Uzbek fighters carry genuine professional power, not just that amateur snap. Madrimov is the cleanest proof of concept that the Uzbek amateur machine can produce fighters capable of operating at the very highest professional level. Other established Uzbek pros include Murodjon Akhmadaliev, former unified super bantamweight champion who held the WBA and IBF belts, Muydinkhujaev Ergashev, light welterweight challenger, and Bektemir Muydinkhujaev, super middleweight contender, all decorated amateurs, all credible world-level professionals. We should also mention Shikram Gayasov. The welterweight had quietly built a serious professional record before running into Jack Catterall on the Rico Verhoeven-Alexander Usyk undercard. And back to the structural question. Why might Uzbek fighters transition more successfully than their Cuban counterparts? While we do not yet know for certain, the sample size is still relatively small and the greatest tests are still ahead of most of these fighters, but the working theory is that Uzbek fighters tend to combine their technical foundations with a more aggressive, damage-oriented output that sits closer to the professional ideal. They show off, they have the flashy amateur footwork, but they also hurt people while doing it. It hasn't all been plain sailing. Hasanboy Dusmatov and Bakadir Jalalov have failed to commit fully to the professional game. Both left the pro game for spells to return and win second Olympic gold medals. It seems Dusmatov will never take off, and Jalalov is an item of extreme frustration. 17-0, but it's all weak opposition. He's simply not inspiring in the pro ranks. We've noticed a repeated pattern in his pro fights against Smikici, Vitaly Kudzakov and Ihor Shevedutsky. Big Bakadir tends to start well, tremendous footwork, technical skill. He'll land these aesthetically pleasing but quick and powerless shots. By about round 4, his opponent will realise that Jalalov doesn't set his feet. They'll start to walk through a few shots. Jalalov can get to looking terribly edgy and uncomfortable, like he really does not like being punched in those small gloves. Now, so far he's managed to hold it together, but it's not a good look to be getting rattled and stressed by guys at the level he is fighting. Smikici was pulled from the fight by his corner just as he was finding success. Guess that's just boxing. So Jalalov is probably the cautionary tale. He has every physical and technical tool, but he just doesn't seem to have the aggression or the will to be a world-level professional fighter over longer distances. While Dusmatov and Jalalov have disappointed in the pro game, there are a host of fighters with difficult-to-pronounce names, stylish footwork, and heavy hands who look like they have plenty to offer in the pro game. Take Javikir Ummataliev's recent performance against Drabic, a must watch. Ummataliev fights at multiple ranges, lands consecutive right uppercuts, cuts Lomachenko-esque pivots, and wins via a buzzer-beater left hook. He is one of the most complete-looking of the emerging names. Recently in Doncaster, we saw Asad Kuja Muydinkhujaev improve to 2-0, dazzling with footwork, angles and thumping body shots against Alexis Torres. Muydinkhujaev is another Olympic gold medalist from Paris, and the expectation around him is also considerable. 2 fights in, smooth sailing so far. Both he and Ummataliev appeared on UK shores, on Queensberry promotion cards, and we sincerely hope this proves a sustainable long-term route for Uzbek prospects onto the big stage. Behind the pair of Olympic gold winners there is Choi fighting out of South Korea, 5-0 heavyweight Ozodbek Aliev, and super featherweight prospect Kyrgyzbek Rasuljunov. So will they do it? The Cubans had Stevenson and Savon and we never found out. It looks like this next Uzbek generation are going to pursue professional boxing in earnest, and we think 2026 is the year we start to find out what kind of impact they're gonna make. So what do you think? Are we entering a golden age for Uzbek boxing? Will some of these guys become world champions? Or are they overrated? Is there just too much time spent in the amateur game and they can't properly transition to a functional and successful professional boxing style? Let us know in the comments. Do likes and subscribes. Stay safe. Elbows and chin tucked, please.